as Brian mentioned, I want to talk about patience in a hectic world. So, here we are in the heart of Silicon Valley. It's one of the most exciting places to live, one of the most fast-paced places to live, and I'm sure those of you who live in the area would agree with me that there are lots of pluses and lots of drawbacks to living in a place like this. So some of the pluses would be that it's such an innovative place to live. Creativity is encouraged. Creativity is expected. We have wonderful technical breakthroughs that we participate in that really help ourselves, help the world. It's a place where wealth can be had. You have good ideas, you have a startup company, you can really blossom in this area. It's also a place where you can have a real healthy competition, right? And it can also have some drawbacks too. The flip side of the healthy competition is it can be pretty treacherous at some time. And you can see some cutthroat artificial intelligence and stealing of ideas and so on. But also, we often find when we are in a fast-paced situation that we don't have time for ourselves. We don't have time for others. We can end up feeling a little guilty because we don't spend time with the people we'd like to. Or we could feel stressed, and stress, as we know, takes a toll on us in many different ways. We can also find ourselves preoccupied and maybe physically a little bit off balance because of the tension that we're living in. So add to this the overlay of the holidays that we're in the middle of right now. And what's that like? Long lines at grocery stores, long lines at department stores. It's just it's not really an environment where you think about patience too much, or that patience comes naturally to you in that situation. So I want to ask you, do you feel that it's possible to be patient in this type of an environment? Do you feel that it's beneficial to be patient in this type of environment? So today I want to start by taking a look at the definition of patience. What do we mean exactly? And looking at the etymology, we've got origins in French and in Latin, and I get to practice my French here. Patience. Patience in French and in Latin, paciencia. And just to sum up what it originally meant was the quality of being willing to bear adversities. Calm endurance of misfortune and suffering. So our modern day definitions, I have 4 of them for you. The first is the calm endurance of pain, affliction, annoyance, misfortune, or inconvenience without complaining, losing your temper, or becoming angry or irritated. The second definition is forbearance or long-suffering under provocation, especially tolerance of the faults or limitations of other people. The third is calm, self-possessed waiting, the ability to accept delay and suppress restlessness when you are confronted with a delay. And the last is constancy or diligence in work, exertion or effort, and the ability to persevere. That essentially means to keep on keeping on, even during the difficult times. So So in this talk, I want to touch upon three areas. The first is some psychological aspects of patience. The second is lessons or analogies from nature. And the last is patience with others and patience with ourselves. And I want to mention to you that at the end there will be a question and answer period, but right before then I'm going to stop, and there could be some of you when I'm giving my talk that it will really hit you, a situation that you have had personally where patience played a major role, a significant role, either because you were patient something great happened, or because you were impatient you learned a big lesson on, gee, I wish I had been more patient in that situation. So, starting out with so I've got my pages mixed up here. Starting out with the psychological parts. How many of you heard of the Stanford Marshmallow test? Anybody? Yeah, a few of you. All right, well, this was a test that happened back in the 1970s. A couple of professors at Stanford decided to explore what the aspects were of delayed gratification. What is delayed gratification? It is the ability to wait to obtain something that you want. So what they did was they went to Bing, School for Children, which is on campus, and children from 4 to 6 years old, they were given a tray with a marshmallow on it. And most kids love sweet things, right? Love marshmallows. So there's the marshmallow on the tray. And the researcher tells the child, okay, here's a marshmallow. You could eat the marshmallow right away, but if you wait for 15 minutes, which for a kid, even for us, that's a long time, isn't it? If you wait for 15 minutes, you'll get 2 marshmallows at the end. So, any questions, kid? No. One by one, they were put in this room, sat there, and they were filming the child the whole time. So cute. You can see this online if you want to. Some kids covering their eyes, some kids massaging the little marshmallow, some kids kicking the table, some kids, fidgeting around, and some kids just saying, oh, marshmallow, eat it immediately. As you can guess, the younger kids had less, ability to be patient about it or to have delayed gratification. But it turns out that about a third of them couldn't wait too long. About a third of them tried their best, but in the end they ate the marshmallow before the 15 minutes. And a third of them actually waited the whole 15 minutes. And there's one of them, it shows the kid when they brought in the second marshmallow, he was so excited he put them both in his mouth, looked like a chipmunk, with these 2 marshmallows. Well, Stanford, of course, had to do follow-up studies on this, and very interesting results. They found that the children who were able to wait for the 15 minutes into adulthood had less involvement with crime, had higher SAT scores, were able to have more what they perceived success as they got older, and also physically, had larger prefrontal cortexes, which is where our decision making is, and larger ventral striatum, which is what affects our ability to overcome addictions or to avoid the temptations of addictions. So that's delayed gratification. The second psychological concept I want to talk to you about is related to emotional intelligence, and we've talked about this before. I think many of you know about Daniel Goleman's book. And I want to quote some passages from him. He says, IQ, or intelligence quotient, is not nearly as important in terms of overall human intelligence as the predictive of happiness and success as what I have termed emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence includes self-awareness and impulse control, patience, persistence, zeal, and self-motivation, empathy, and social deftness. These are the qualities that mark people who excel in real life, whose intimate relationships flourish, who are stars in the workplace. And these are also the hallmarks of character and self-discipline, of altruism and compassion, which are basic capacities needed if our society is to thrive. And I know with the humanist community, you really encourage these traits. It's something that, being civically attentive and paying attention to real life situations and taking care of each other is a very, very important component. The third item is self-control. And that's something that I don't think we like to talk about too much. Do you have self-control? But Stanford researcher Bill Newsom studied this extensively, and he said that controlling our negative behavior, including impatience, creates, and I love this, freedom is wrapped up with control. That is self-control. I don't think we often think of freedom. Freedom we think of releasing and not having to have control. But in his research he found that those who had self-control really had the most freedom because they had control over what was happening in the environment and could look at things more objectively. And then as a preface to the fourth psychological tool, which is related to time, I want to recite to you my poem called I Can't Wait. So I Can't Wait is broken down into three sections. I can't wait for slow things. I can't wait for good things. I can't wait for bad things. And I can't wait for anything. That pretty much covers it, doesn't it? All right, I can't wait. I can't wait for slow things. I can't wait in line. The cab's not on time. The food takes too long. The teller is wrong. The copier's slow. I'm stuck in this row. There's never enough. Life's always so tough. And I can't wait for good things. The good stuff won't last. Vacation's too fast. I can't wait for spring. When will the phone ring? There's just so much food. I'm not in the mood. Can't wait for a break. How much can I take? I can't wait for bad things. A storm's in the works. The dentist date lurks. It's risky outside. I know I can't hide. I'm destined to fail. I'm drowning in mail. Divorce will come soon. Tonight's a full moon. And I can't wait for anything. Why can't things just pass in one cosmic blast? Why can't life just occur in one cosmic blur? It's never just right. I'm always uptight. Life's so hard to take. Why? 'Cause I can't wait. We just can't wait. So, this is creating perceived or expressions of time. We're always feeling that life goes by us so quickly. And there was a great article, it's called, "If Money Doesn't Make You Happy, Consider Time." There were two researchers at Stanford that decided that time, not money, is your most precious resource, so spend your time wisely. Now I want to quote what their research said. Unlike money, time is inherently scarce. No one gets more than 24 hours per day. In fact, there is a bidirectional relationship between time scarcity and its value. Not only does having little time make it feel more valuable, but when time is more valuable, it is perceived as more scarce. To increase happiness, it can make sense to focus on the here and now, because thinking about the present moment as opposed to the future has been found to slow down the perceived passage of time. Simply breathing more deeply can have similar effects. In one study, subjects who were instructed to take long and slow breaths versus short and quick ones for 5 minutes not only felt there was more time available to get things done, but also perceived the day as longer. And even though feeling time constraints makes people less likely to take the time to help someone else, to be patient, doing so actually makes people feel as though they have more spare time and gives them a sense of more expansive future. Therefore, if you can't afford to buy time, such as hiring a maid, focus on the present moment, breathe more slowly, and spend the little time you have in a helpful and meaningful way. And this will give you the impression that you are expanding your time and allow you to be more patient. So you can look at those 4 psychological concepts as tools that you can use to increase your patience. So I want to give a couple of examples from nature, things that are like analogies that are helpful to me and might be helpful to you too. So the first one is some things take time. Pretty simple concept, right? But you can't rush everything, and sometimes you have to have patience. Example number 1. You don't plant a seed and then dig it up to see how it's doing. You have to wait. You look at it, what's happening? Nothing's happening. It's not sprouting. So do you dig it up to see what's happening here? No, you don't do that, because you have to allow it to have time. It's not going to grow with you checking on it. And some things in life, you're just going to have to wait. It's going to have to evolve. It's going to have to move. It's not going to happen right away. The second example is that sometimes we're impatient, things seem ugly, or it's a difficult time, but occasionally slogging through things and having the patience to endure things actually can give us insights and provide us with strength. And sometimes there are beautiful outcomes because we have taken the time to have patience to get through it. And my nature example on this is the butterfly. So my family and I were at the Natural Bridges State Park in Santa Cruz. Some of you have probably been there, and there's a really nice gift shop, and part of the gift shop is that they have displays and videos, and so there's this wonderful video on the monarchs, and at that time the monarchs were in the eucalyptus trees there. And so we were pretty excited and watching the video, and all of a sudden the park ranger says, "It's happening, it's happening." And there was a chrysalis that had fallen to the ground, and they had brought it in and put it on the counter there and waiting patiently. And fortunately someone saw when the butterfly was starting to crack through the chrysalis. So all of us went, I think there were probably around 12 of us there, and we were so excited. The little crack, all of a sudden it starts, moving. And it's taking a long time. This is a big struggle for this poor little butterfly. Finally cracks, but there's a piece of the chrysalis that won't drop off, and it keeps trying and struggling. And let me tell you, it's so tempting to help the poor little fellow, right? Just one little click with your fingernail, you could help it do that, but of course that's not going to be really helpful. Well, finally it shakes off the chrysalis, and then what do you see? One of the most ugliest things I've ever seen, this horrible looking black wrinkly thing. It looks like it's covered with tar with dark oil over it, and so now it's with the antennae, it starts rubbing itself and rubs and rubs and rubs, and it has to take a break. It rubs and rubs some more, takes another break. And then after quite a long time, you start seeing a little bit of orange, a little bit of the orange monarch color under the black. And finally, the black is gone and the beautiful orange. But this is only after a lot of persistence and a lot of struggle and a lot of getting tired and resting and a lot of starting up again. So I look at that and I think that's how it is with us and patience and life and persistence. That sometimes to get to the beautiful part, there is often a struggle. And that struggle can be tiring. Sometimes we want to give up in the middle of it. And sometimes it's appropriate to go another route. But sometimes it's appropriate to stick with it. And then you get the great benefits of it. I learned literally years later about the butterfly. And I learned that if the butterfly doesn't struggle that much, that the fluids don't get into the wings appropriately. So that struggle is part of what ultimately makes the butterfly strong. So let's talk a little bit about patience with others and patience with ourselves. So in patience with others, we need to look at when to be patient and when to take action. So I'm going to give you some examples here. With a child may be a slow learner, for example, and you're very frustrated. Has anyone had experiences with children that don't learn at a normal rate? Yeah. So it takes a lot of patience, doesn't it? That the normal evolution of learning isn't happening with these persons, and sometimes it's tempting to get angry. We kind of project who we are and that they should not be so slow. But criticizing them or getting overly frustrated with them doesn't help, does it? In fact, it could leave a negative impact on them, on their self-esteem, and on their future. There have been a lot of studies of kids who have been criticized a lot, that it does affect their ability to learn. And kids that have been praised a lot, it does affect their ability to learn. So we can damage folks by not being patient with them. On the other hand, there are times not to be patient with a child, and that is when there are certain behavior problems. And there was a magazine years ago called McCall's. Do any of you remember that magazine? No? Yeah. It was a great magazine, and it had a column in it where it was an advice column. And usually advice columns, they've got professionals, psychologists or psychiatrists giving advice. And in this particular case, this magazine had the readers giving the advice. So a reader would write in with a problem or issue that they were trying to deal with, and then people would write to the magazine and give comments on how they feel it should be dealt with. And I was very, very impressed with this one person and the response. So this person's situation was that their teenager was a great kid, and then all of a sudden they got involved with a bad group of people, and it turned the teenage girl's life around, and it started making things miserable for the mother. The child was getting involved in criminal behaviors, in drugs, and she just didn't know what to do. But the mother's main fear was alienating her girl. So she didn't want to confront her. She wanted to not lose the friendship that she had with her. So there were 3 responses. And the one that impressed me the most was a woman who started out by saying, "I was your daughter. That was me. My mother was you. My mother was afraid to not be my friend. My mother was afraid to alienate me. So she would say things to me, but she wouldn't pull in the reins to the point to alienate me." And she said, "I've spent my life having a horrible life. I've been in jail many times. I've been addicted. I've been hurt. And I will tell you one thing, I really resent my mother for being so lax, for being so patient, for not giving me guidance. I didn't need a friend. I needed a mother. I needed a parent to guide me in right paths." So there's a time for a parent to be patient, and there's another time to pull in the reins and to even get angry if you need to. Second example is with a spouse, when to be patient. There are some times that your spouse or partner can go on and on and on and drive you crazy, talking about a certain situation, maybe a problem at work, maybe a friend, maybe some money problems, and you just kind of come to the end of the rope. Maybe you give advice, but they keep needing to talk about it. And so you got to look at the whole picture here. Do you have something to give? Are you able to, spend a little time giving them the time love that they need? And then also with a spouse and a partner, there may be times when action is needed. So for example, your spouse may start coming home late, and at the same time really not wanting to interact with you, or appearing to pull away a bit. So that would be a time to take action in terms of finding out what is happening, having a conversation, not being patient, just living in resentment of why is this happening. Time to find out about what would be going on there. And then with a neighbor, an example of when to have patience would be, let's say someone's yard is going downhill and it's an elderly person. And, the neighbors are starting to complain, and maybe it's time to be patient and just gently find out what's going on here. It could be that the person is no longer physically able to do something. Could be that maybe there's a teenage neighbor that might be able to help out, but a patient route would be the best way to go. In terms of taking action, if you found out a neighbor was bullying your son, that would be a time to take action. Things are best if they're nipped in the bud, as you know. And that's not the time to be saying, oh, I'm going to wait a while. I'm going to see what happens. When someone's bullied, that's not the time to have patience. And one thing I want to mention is that sometimes we will use patience as an excuse not to take action. So in that situation with a neighbor bullying, you might say, oh, I'm going to wait a while, just be a patient, just see if things change on their own. So just make sure that you're not using patience as an excuse for yourself. So sometimes you have to be brave and do something about it. So let's talk a little bit about being patient with ourselves. Do you think it's possible to be patient with others but not be patient with yourself? Yeah. I see a lot of people nodding yes. Keep in mind that patience with yourself is a quality that's really going to enhance your life as your patience with others enhances their life. It's a kindness, isn't it? It's a kindness to yourself. So I want to give you some physical examples. How many of you know who Jack Lalanne is? Yeah, he's one of my heroes. In fact, he and I had correspondence with each other. I had the pleasure of meeting him at the Commonwealth Club around his 90th birthday, and he and Elaine were there, his dear wife. Both of them beautiful physiques. He very physically fit, and she looking like a little ballerina. So people were kind of teasing him. You probably remember that he pulled 3 tugboats from Alcatraz to the mainland. So they were saying, hey, Jack, what are you going to do for your 90th? You're going to, pull some more tugboats? And he said, I might pull Elaine across the bathtub. He said, but one thing I'll tell you is you have to be patient with your body. You have to recalibrate as you age on what is your body capable of doing, what does it want to do, and what is healthy for it to do. And not keep expecting your body to do what it did 10 or 20 years ago. So I don't know if you know, but he wrote a book when he was 95. It's called Live Young Forever. He died when he was 96. And he was telling Elaine, I really can't die. I just wrote a book about Live Young Forever, but he had a great sense of humor. Second physical example is Steph Curry. Do people know Steph Curry? He's a Golden State Warrior basketball player. And this just 3 weeks ago, I was listening to him being interviewed on television, and people were asking him, he had a groin strain, a pretty serious one. He wasn't able to play. And they were asking him, well, what's this like, and, what's going on with you? And he said, the situation I'm in, this is a quote, he says, it's just a matter of staying patient. I need to be patient. I need to allow my body to heal. So, big emphasis for him on just letting it be and allowing himself to have the time to heal. So our bodies are always giving us signals, aren't they? I mean, every second of the day, our body is communicating with us, and most often we don't pay much attention to what it's saying, but we often choose to ignore it because we're impatient and we want things to happen in a certain time span. We want things basically to happen right now. So I want to give you one example. There are a lot of television commercials on your body and how it shouldn't rule you, you should rule it. And in this one, you may have seen this ad. It's a fellow, he's sitting on his sofa, and he's in great pain. He's in his living room. Oh, gosh, he's in great pain. And I don't remember the name of the medication. It was probably Advil. And it said, don't let your body keep you from doing what you want to do. Take Advil. So, by gosh, that guy takes a couple of Advil, and the next day, do you know what he's able to do? And you know how I know this is true? Because it showed it on the ad. He was out in the woods, and he was jumping over 2-foot logs, and he wasn't on a path. And he kept leaping over them like an athlete. And I was so impressed. I thought, wow, that's really something. And he wasn't going to let his body keep him from doing what he wanted to do. Another one was a fellow who he was real overweight, sitting in a chair, and, holding his stomach. He was in great pain. And the ad says, don't let your body keep you from eating the foods you want to eat. So he takes whatever medication it is they were promoting, probably an antacid, and the miracle happens again. And he turns from a sourpuss into the happiest man I have ever seen. I mean, I'd like to meet that guy who's so happy. He was just jumping up and down, and I have proof because I saw it on TV. What the after was, he was in the grocery store pushing a cart, leaping down the aisles, picking up sausages and pizzas and pies, all the foods that he loved, and now he didn't have to slow down, he didn't have to be patient, he could eat anything he wanted. So there you have it. If you don't want to be patient, if you don't want to listen to your body, just find the right pill and you'll be in great shape. So I hope some of the things that I've mentioned here can make you more aware of being patient in your life and help you to use it as a tool to actually enrich your life. So I mentioned before that there might be some of you that have a situation that you would like to share. And before the question and answer period, I would like to give you an opportunity. Is there anyone who has a situation that they'd like to share in terms of patience, how it helped them, or a situation where they weren't patient and they wish they had been? Anybody? Right there?
Raise your hand. Good.
Yeah, I had a situation where I was on a motorcycle trip. I was going down to Los Angeles to watch my sister perform down there, and I was leaving San Francisco. I had to make a stop here in San Jose and see a friend of mine, and this went on longer than I wanted it to, and I kept saying, man, I got to get on the road. And then one delay after another, I start to leave the house, something else comes up. So I'm on the road now an hour and a half, a lot later than I wanted to be, and I'm not happy about this. I'm on my motorbike. It's morning, pretty much like today. The rain is coming up. I've got my rain gear on, and as I'm heading down 85, this glare of light comes up, and I couldn't see because the sun had come out of the clouds. Well, I'm glad I was delayed because a couple miles down the road near where 85 goes into 101, there was about a 12-car pileup that I'd missed because I'd been delayed at my friend's house, and that really gave me some pause for thought. And after that, I figure if I'm being delayed either because somebody's slow in front of me or something happens, it's probably for a good reason. And I try to remind myself of this constantly, in my situation, my work, and my daily life, that maybe if I'm getting delayed, there is a good reason for it, because some things are beyond our control. So that's my situation. Thank you.
Great. Here's someone up front.
At 95, the hectic world has passed me by. The only thing that bothers me are stoplights and the Republican Party. Beyond that, there's nothing worth. I've spent half my life in bed. Anybody else?
That sums it up pretty well, doesn't it? Well, you know what? It sounds like you have a pretty darn good life.
What?
Sounds like you have a pretty darn good life.
It's all downhill, kids. Don't get old.
Right. The golden years aren't what they're made out to be, are they?
Anybody else?
Yeah, someone said it beats the alternative. Okay, if there are any other examples of patience before we go to questions and comments? Okay, any questions and comments that you have?
I remember reading something a long time ago that made an impression on me. Somebody was frustrated by what was going on, and he said, "God grant me patience, and I want it now."
Yeah, right.
When you were talking about the mother who didn't intervene with her teenage daughter, I just remembered I heard Carol Burnett many years ago. I guess her daughter had some major drug problems, and she said that she had learned that she needed to love her daughter enough to allow her daughter to hate her for a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is really something. And you know what, Brian? It takes a brave parent to do that. So if there's one thing you don't want to do is alienate your child.
I was listening to the radio the other day, and they were talking about how much time we spend waiting in line, and how he was talking about the cost of waiting in line. But someone came on at the end, and she didn't have any research to back her up, but she thought that waiting in line was good for people. It's the only real chance we have to learn patience and to learn to live with ourselves.
Yeah, it's true. Some people, we always think of delays as something bad, and we don't think of it, oh good, I have time to rest my brain for a while, right? Yes?
Also about waiting in line, I've noticed that I have to plan for waiting in line. I mean, an errand can take 5 minutes, but waiting in line to pay for something, or waiting in line in the parking lot to find a parking space to do the errand, have to allow a lot more time to do that. All the peripheral tasks, just to go and find something on the shelf where you know where it is and actually pay for it, doesn't take time.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's one of the reasons that, aside from maybe financial discounts, some people like buying things online because they don't want to have to go to a store. They don't have to want to wait in a line. It takes time to do that. So our society's changing, but it has to do with patience, doesn't it? Yeah. Yes.
Hi. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
2 questions. One is, I think you touched on it. If I remember and if I heard you correctly, I think you said taking deep breaths, but I want to know if there is more to say on it. So one question is how to develop patience. How to develop patience. If one is impatient in certain area or whatever it is they're impatient with. Let's say, for example, there's someone in your life who is very slow, a slow talker, it takes forever for them to get a sentence out or to move or whatever, or whether it is the traffic or the grocery, the line at the grocery store, situations where clearly you need patience and you don't have enough of it, how to develop patience. And the second question is situations when it's not clear what's better, to be patient or not patient, how to develop a good and clear, discernment, how to discern, okay, do I need to be patient here or not?
Great, two great questions. First of all, how to develop patience. I believe that patience is something that can be developed by anyone. Some of us, I think, came in with more patience than others. Do you find that? You'll see that in children. I see that with myself. I'm one of the fortunate ones that came in with a big dose of being able to be patient. One of the things that helps people develop patience is looking at it very logically. And when I was talking about those 4 psychological tools, if you look at it logically, patience does prove to be an asset. And I'm speaking this way to the humanist community because I know all of you tend to be intellectual and tend to like logic and science. To understand that being patient is going to be helpful to you makes you want to slow down to be able to develop it. So when you find yourself in a situation where you're being impatient, and I'm not talking about you should move ahead and help someone who fell on the ground. I'm talking about where you have the option to be patient. And I think most of us have a glimmer of when we're being impatient and we should be more patient. You wish you could be more patient. That's your big opportunity to seize it. Like, oh, I'm in the middle of being impatient. And with your logic and with your intellect, you can slow yourself down to choose to use your will to not be so impatient. So I think that's one of the main ways, is to, first of all, understand what patience can be an asset to you, and also to catch yourself in the process of being impatient and using your mind. Your mind is the builder of this strength to do that. Another thing is watching others be impatient. You can learn from watching someone else be impatient, saying, analyze that a little bit, and how does that apply to you? So watching yourself, your own impatience, and watching others, that can help you. They're tied together, aren't they? Like you're saying, the discernment on that. You have to slow down enough to get to a deeper understanding of yourself. And I think in our society, we don't take time to think about things too deeply sometimes. I know that meditation has a non-spiritual and a spiritual side to it. Meditation in terms of quieting the brain, bringing the brain to a slower, even physical level. If you have electrodes put on and you're meditating on a concept or a word or on nothingness, it does physically affect your brain waves. And if you can slow down, then usually you can become more calm, more tolerant, sometimes kinder, because you can become more patient. So in that state of slowness, sometimes you can see things a little more clearly, can't you? Because you're not frantically grabbing it. Now I need to do this, I need to do this. You're actually taking time to assess and to use your mind, use your brain in the ultimate way it can be used. So there are a few more. Okay.
The line question or issue I find interesting, as well as the second on how do you decide, one way or the other. So it makes me think of two areas. One is with delayed gratification. I would suggest part of that is the ability to anticipate or see consequences. And the other question, I think, or related, what your thoughts are on this is the delayed gratification and emotional intelligence. How much of that has to do with values and different cultures?
Right. Yes. I think there are really a lot of differences in cultures, and I'm glad you pointed that out because I hadn't touched upon that at all. I was talking with someone the other day about some of the third world countries and why people aren't able to come up or to achieve more positive things for the culture to bring things up. And the person who lived in that country said, Susan, you have to understand that I won't say what country it was, but she said, in my culture, if someone starts being too smart or too successful, we need to pull them down. If they're going to make it, we need to bring them back down. I mean, can you imagine? And I think all of us have a little bit of that in us, maybe a little envy or a little jealousy. But so that's a big thing there, a huge cultural difference. In terms of the delayed gratification, yes. It really helps to have what your goal is or what your outcome is in mind. What is your marshmallow? And are you willing to delay your gratification to get a whole other marshmallow? So that's important. I think there was one other comment. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Dana St. George. Yeah, I think about it sometimes because I see that because of all of these technological devices that our particular culture is so saturated with, and it's so easy for people, for example, to go online and buy things from Amazon, for example. And I recently tried that.
Now, don't say that because my books are on Amazon.
Oh, it was wonderful. It was like immediate, I mean, the thing was delivered the next day, and it was a book I wanted and needed, and it was really wonderful. But I had, just totally avoided using that service. But I think all around us right now, the culture is getting speedier and speedier. And like, for example, I don't have a cell phone. And I have one, but I never use it. I used it once. That was enough. I don't like my privacy to be invaded by a gadget. And so I see that all around me people are just totally engaged in pressing buttons and having very rapid responses and carrying on these frenzied conversations in the middle of doing 2 or 3 other things, and walking down the street and not walking out in front of cars and not even noticing it. And I think, I really think this is maybe not a good trend. So I congratulate you for bringing up this subject here, because I think it's going to be very important, and people are going to have to probably take courses in the future to learn about patience and delayed gratification, because there will be hardly any left.
I think you've made some great points. Yes, our society is going down that path, isn't it? Things have to be faster, quicker, no gaps. Communication with people, they have to get back to you right away. It's almost like, I have to say, I feel we're almost becoming slaves to technologies in a way. When is the last time you actually totally relaxed, totally rested? I mean, can you even think of a time? It used to be when we were kids, we'd play and then we'd conk out, And now we play, but then we have obligations. There's just really no time for ourselves. And with our devices and with social media, people have expectations. You didn't get back to me, or you didn't update your Facebook, or you didn't this or that. It's pretty hard. Frankly, I think we're going to see a lot of nervous breakdowns. I think we're going to see a lot of serious mental conditions with teenagers in particular. So,
yes, with regard to what Dana said, I remember when I was 17 and living in Omaha, I had a summer job that was downtown in the WOW cafeteria, and I had to start at 7 o'clock, but my dad started work at 5:30. So he would, and the bus stop to downtown was quite a ways, and so my dad would take me to the bus stop, and then I'd catch a bus to downtown, but it took 40 minutes from the time I got to the bus stop before the bus came.
Wow.
And I remember saying to my dad, I just hate sitting here for 40 minutes waiting for the bus. And my dad said, people have to learn to live with themselves, and people need time for reflection. And so he said I should use that 40 minutes and get to know myself. And as I look around the world today, you never see somebody walking down the street. They're not looking ahead, they're fiddling with their cell phones or something. I think actually, I agree with Dana on this, that one of the problems of our society today is that there is no time for reflection. People don't reflect, and they respond instantaneously and stupidly a lot of times. And I think that, I don't know what to be done about it, but I think it's unfortunate.
how was it? Your dad sounds like an amazing person. I can't imagine a father saying that to a child.
My dad, he was born in 1902, and he lived on a farm, and he went to college, and he couldn't afford to go to college, and so he had to drop out for a couple of years and work. And one of the things that he did in order to go to college was he sold a farm book, on advice to farmers on how to be more successful farmers.
Wow.
And what he did was, to sell this book, he walked from farm to farm and then talked to the people, and then he would sleep in their barns or something like that. And he did this all summer long for a couple of summers. And I think he just learned from kind of painful experience that patience is a virtue.
He certainly planted a beautiful seed in his daughter's mind. That's a beautiful story.
Okay, I think we're just about out of time. Does anybody else have a burning question or comment? All right, well, let's give our speaker a hand.